Teachers of Reddit, what is your "this student is so smart it's scary" story? I had a student ask for an extension on their paper because they were representing our nation in the World Science Festival. They came in third and the paper was an A+. Had a first grader figure out exponents on his own. Edit. Also to note, the kid knew numbers, but we had to read the directions to him because he couldn't read well enough yet. That's just the way he was raised. More power to him. I taught high school math. One of my freshman students divided 1134 by 63 in his head in less than a second. I let him finish the problem, and then after he arrived at his answer, I asked him, "How did you do that?" He looked at me with this blank stare, as if he was thinking, "You can't do that." He proceeded to say, "Well, I doubled 63 and then multiplied that by 10, and then I saw that 1134 was just the difference of those two numbers, so 18. Looked at me like it was nothing. I told him good work and moved on. I'm only above average at a few things, but one of them is mental math. When I saw that this kid could do this calculation that I couldn't, I was so happy. It was one of my happiest moments as a teacher. I didn't help him in that moment, but to know I played a small part in his math education felt so good. Edit. Okay, I get it. You're all geniuses. I wish I had you all in my math class. I once had a pre-kindergartner who could read and cried because he was so upset with how dumb the rest of the kids were. Sad thing is that feeling will haunt him his whole life. Not necessarily. I could read really well before kindergarten, but it wasn't because I was smart. It was because I was the oldest child of a stay-at-home mom who spent all day doting on me and teaching me cool things. I was a genius until 6th grade. Then I was average, and now I'm stupid. Point being, there's a chance he'll feel better in a couple years when the rest of the kids catch up. Kid took the fat highlighters, cut them open, and removed the insides, and replaced it with weed. Sold them at school. He was caught, but only because a kid snitched after they were caught getting high. Absolutely brilliant. Highlighters. It's right there in the name. We had a 4-year-old in preschool. He was sitting under the table writing down numbers for a long time. He had no time to talk to us. When he came out and we looked at what he had been doing, he said he wrote down all the multiplications. It turns out his brother in 5th grade was learning the multiplication table, and this little brother really wanted to do the same, but did not have a multiplication table. He counted on his fingers to add each column, and got the table right. A few days later he knew multiplication. He would also comment on dates. If someone told they had their birthday on June 12th, he would say, "That is in 184 days," almost immediately. On an excursion we passed some statues with birth and death dates, and he would casually sum up. He was 78 years and 110 days old. She was born 33 years and 120 days before him, etc. I think he was maybe more focused and willing to understand than necessarily so smart. Edit. Since got some traction. This kid is really the whole package. He is enthusiastic about everything. Gymnastics, science, art, math. Not at all to compete, just because it is what he likes. Other kids just follow him, and he is often the center, and he is kinda nice. Never seen him push, hassle or brag. Just enjoys taking in all facets of life. I just wanted to show him I could see who he was. I treated him as an adult in conversations and feedback. He was of course childish in many ways, but behind the noise of childishness was a wise soul I wanted to know and encourage. Hua, Silver. I'm a piano teacher on the side, teaching a 4-year-old how to read sheet music before she can read books. I ask her to find the season she will point then out on the page ECT. She can also do math really well and understands the concept of multiplication. Also another student that just started and plays by ear and composes her own pieces at 8. She also speaks 5 languages, which I didn't find out until I told her I was learning German. After teaching her for 3 months she's already to the point where I had to send her to a better teacher. One of my kindergarteners just knows multiplication and not just the basic 5s or 10s. In the beginning, when his parents told me I played along with 2x2 or 10x10, but you can tell him 17x14 and he knows it instantly. So cool to watch. My daughter was like that at 3. My sister is a kindergarten teacher and she just loves telling people she taught my daughter multiplication as a toddler. Really, she was distracting her in a store and my daughter was counting by 2s. My sister said, "Can you do that with 3s?" My daughter thought about it and then just did it. They went through this all the way to the 7s in 10 minutes. My sis told her it was called multiplication and to this day takes credit for it. My daughter is currently in 6th grade, taking both Algebra 1 and Geometry. She isn't a genius or prodigy, she isn't doing so well in history. Probably because, for example, instead of taking notes on the Haitian Revolution yesterday, she started writing all the exponents for 3. She was proud to show me she got all the way to 3 to the 50th. Some people just feel numbers and enjoy them more than other things. I was doing a 500-piece puzzle with some kids. I was a preschool teacher. We finished the puzzle, except for one piece, which was nowhere to be found. Kid comes in, takes one look at the puzzle on the table, says, "Oh, are you missing that? I know where it is." Reaches into another completely different 500-piece puzzle, rummages for like 10 seconds, pulls the piece out, fits it in. I asked him how he knew it was there. He said he had done the other puzzle for a bit and noticed it. I asked him how long ago. "Christmas," he says. It was February at the time. Kid was maybe 5 at the time. Might be more memory than intelligence, but that was crazy to see. Such a great kid, in somewhat dire circumstance. I hope he's gotten all the opportunities he deserved. Not a teacher, but a proud big brother. My baby sister was 5 when I came home from college for the summer after actually figuring out calculus. And I explained it to her. And she wrote it down in her journal. Yes, she kept one from the time she was about 4. Fast forward after she skipped a few grades in elementary school and she was taking calculus in high school and could not understand why it was so easy, and reread her journal, figured it out, and called me, laughing. She has a PhD in high energy physics and does research at CERN. Yeah, that stuff. Desperately proud of her. A student at my school had OCD, so just memorized the textbook and wrote out the correct chapter for each question. Also, their handwriting was so neat that it looked like it had been typed out with a typewriter. I have mild OCD and all it helps me do is constantly reminding me that I forgot to lock the front door, even though I remembered. I had a kid who could take one look at a national flag and then point to the corresponding country on an unlabeled world map instantly. Nah, I think that kid spent too many hours playing grand strategy games. Not a teacher, but had a classmate who was, and still is, a genius. I distinctly remember him asking very complex questions on the current reading literature and making constructive arguments. It was over my head, but our teacher was offended and argued back that he didn't understand anything and or an overachiever. I think they were over her head as well. She screamed at him and stormed out of class a number of times. There was a time she asked him to leave as well. I never felt so bad for a classmate. He didn't deserve to be yelled at like that. I believe he's now a mathematician with published works and awards as well as a successful musician. Not a teacher, but a kid in my grade ended up taking courses 2 years ahead of the rest of us advanced kids. The funny part was that he skipped his own mother's class and wrote novels during middle school math. He's published 3 books and currently has over 95% in every class. My mother told me a story once of a kid she went to high school with. This kid was the local stoner, but incredibly smart. He was talking college courses way before everyone else, saying they like ran out of math for me dog. One of my high school classmates was a classic stoner. I don't know how he made it out of high school, he was so stoned all the time. He went on to become the head of pediatric orthopedics at one of the best teaching hospitals in the country. On the other hand, another stoner classmate was taking post-calculus math from the local junior college while we were in high school. He's been institutionalized since we were maybe 23 after frying his brain on drugs. You can't ever tell which way a brilliant stoner will go. I had a first grader with a speech impediment who was asking for a type of book. His peers and I couldn't understand him, no matter how hard we tried. Finally, he gave up, and without any frustration, he found a picture book with someone stirring a pot on the cover. He opened the book and skimmed through words until he found what he was looking for, the word cooking. He showed me the book and pointed, telling me that was the word he had been trying to say. He wanted a cookbook. This was a 6-year-old. 6. This kid was working as a janitor at my university. He kept doing the math equations that the professor left on the chalkboard. He was wicked smart. His name? Albert Einstein. My mom was a student teacher in the early 1970s. She recounts the story of a gifted first grader that nobody really knew how to handle. Every day her mentor would give the child a copy of the New York Times and let him read during her class. Much later my mom was working as a speech therapist and had a severely autistic child that would come in daily. After their lessons he would spend his free time drawing elaborate and accurate city maps on the whiteboard. It was fascinating. I was a student teacher at the time completing my education degree. I taught 8th grade. There was this one girl who was your typical edgy, angsty 13-year-old who was too cool for everything. When we went through our poetry unit, we gave a project in which the kids had to write their own free-form poem and put it to some sort of video or slideshow. This girl wrote a poem about how the United States education system as it is stifles creativity and destroys students' joy of learning. I always remember this one line from her poem. I learned more from an evening watching Hamilton on stage than an entire year in a United States history class. The video was your typical angsty black and white shots of her friends standing solemnly in front of or behind chain link fences and signs that say no trespassing. The next day she showed up with a gigantic biography of Alexander Hamilton. It was bigger than most Bibles. It only took her a week to read it. My mentor teacher hated her because she thought the student thought she was smarter than everyone else and was arrogant. Maybe she did think that. Maybe she thought we were annoying simpletons. But I just thought she was dope as fuck. This kid didn't particularly like or dislike me, hated my mentor teacher, and disliked anyone except a couple friends. She was sassy. She was smart. She had a finely tuned bullshit meter. She had a huge vocabulary and an obvious love of learning. She'd grill out book after book. And where my mentor teacher saw arrogance in her poem project, I just saw a girl who was desperately bored and was asking for a challenge. I tried my best to give her extra, more challenging options in the future for her assignments. She never said anything to me, but I got the feeling she appreciated it, or I hope she did. Obligatory not a teacher comment. There was once a kid in the grade above me in middle school that hacked the school database and deleted everyone's grades. He was expelled. Edit. This was about 6 years ago. And it wasn't just as easy as using a teacher's username and password, as teachers only had access to change grades in their own classes. He was caught because he bragged about it. He was just one of those kinds of kids.